just kind of gone. And a whole bunch of cassettes. I don't know whether there's a whole bunch of cassettes gone. Mum and Dad must have just chucked them in a garage sale or thrown them in the bin or something.
What would you do if you found out your mum still had it and like she put it on eBay like now? Like you went on eBay and it was there and it was being sold by, you know, Mrs. Hine of Adelaide.
I'd be so shocked at my mum's ability to use eBay. It's incredible. It's only been a year since I gave Mum one of my old iPhones and helped her transition from her Nokia, which died. I actually thought it would be an insurmountable hurdle for her to learn how to do it. And it certainly did take my youngest daughter hours upon hours sitting next to her explaining how to, you know, make a phone call and you know, text message and all that. And you should have seen how wide my mum's eyes were just when she realised how, you know, clear the text message was, and it was a message. You could do it with photos, and what you could do, and now I've got her on my plan and everything. So she's on the internet, and it's just slowly but surely opening up this incredibly vast world for her that's even beyond her comprehension. But if I suddenly found out she discovered eBay and started buying and selling my childhood toys for a profit, I would be strangely proud, I think, in a way. Do they have show bags overseas? Is show bags a thing at fairs and fetes?
No. So everyone, Tim's about to explain what show bags are. Remember that 30-second button I told you about before on your podcast player? Just give that a couple of quick taps. Just a couple. I think maybe 4 taps should do it. What's a show bag, Tim? By the way, I love show bags, so I'm totally up for hearing how you describe what a show bag is.
But I reckon you'd be look, a show bag. You go to the show and you buy.
You have to explain what the show is, Tim.
Well, the show is like, I'm sure they have fairs and fetes and things like that.
So it's based on what was the old agricultural shows when, you know, the country would come to town and show you, and they'd have their annual competition to judge who has the best cow and who has the best sheep and who grew the best pumpkin. But it's just evolved away. That component still happens, but now it's also fair rides and candy floss, but it just takes over the city, doesn't it? Every city has one. Capital City has a big one, and for like a week it just becomes this massive event.
Yeah, it's the big thing happening. The Royal Adelaide Show, it's called.
Yes.
So it's still got that historical British sort of connection, I guess. But
and show bags.
And show bags are you buy a bag full of lollies and trinkets and things like that inside it. You know, you pay $10 and you walk away with lollies. But of course now they're branded, and they're not just branded after, you know, Freddo Frogs or Samboys or Milo or whatever. But
I love that you chose 3 brands that people outside Australia wouldn't know. I love it. Like, you just like cherry picked. Like, you could have said Cadbury, or you could have like done Mars bars or something. But you chose 3 like obscure Australian brands that no one would understand. You're a genius.
The further we go on, this is going to be okay. Let me stop and explain. Freddo Frogs.
I mean, they have their history, of course. They used to be called sample bags, and they used to be quite boring. And you would have a bag, and you would walk around the show, and the farmer would give you a sample of one of their apples, and and all these boring stuff. But then it just got more and more commercial. And now, before the Royal Adelaide Show comes to town, you would buy the newspaper, and there would be like a catalogue of all the show bags you could buy that year, and there'd be like a couple of hundred of them. Oh, I want the Mars bar show bag because the Mars bar show bag has 3 Mars bars, a can of Coke, a packet of crisps, and a yo-yo. Or I want to get
and a Mars bar hat, and a t-shirt.
And there would also be ones that had like pretty cheap, crappy toys. So you would get the Knight Rider show bag that you mentioned. It would have a Knight Rider autograph book, a Knight Rider pencil case, maybe a plastic Knight Rider car toy.
No, you're wrong there. It had a.
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt at this point, but there was a Knight Rider ruler, a Knight Rider rubber, or eraser.
Yep.
And I can't remember what else. A little notebook. Well, and the notebook is what I turned into my autograph book.
Okay.
That's all it was.
And depending on how wealthy your family was and how spoiled you were would dictate how many show bags you were allowed to get. So your mum and dad would say, all right, this year I'm going to buy you 4 show bags. but you'd be really jealous because Simon's dad always bought him 8 show bags.
Right.
And you only got 4 show bags. But then once you got to the show, all you wanted to do was buy the show bags. But smart parents wouldn't buy the show bags until the end, because otherwise you had to carry them around all day on all the rides and watching all the different, demonstrations and stuff. But impatient kids wanted their show bags straight away. So it was always interesting looking at other kids who were walking around the showgrounds holding all their show bags, and me, who just desperately wanted my show bags. That's all I wanted. Having to wait through, hours of watching sheep and wood cutting and stuff like that until I could finally get my show bags.
I should add, by the way, I didn't grow up obviously in Adelaide, so this is a country show. So this is a much, much, much smaller place with a few rides, but it still took over our little town.
So Tim, even at a country show, you had the full range of show bags?
You had like the Rambo show bag and the Commando show bags. So a few movies and TV shows. I don't remember it being like, it's not like it is now. It's ridiculous. Like, it's over the top, and, fashion magazine show bags and all that kind of stuff.
Are your kids into show bags?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just checking, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you look at that with, disdain, or do you love that? Do you look at that and feel a kind of a nostalgia for your own fascination, or now do you just think they're a pain in the butt like our parents thought they were?
No, their grandma, promises to buy them, one really nice one each year. And so it is. It's the last thing you do is you leave and they get to choose one. It's become a bit of a novelty, but it takes...
So they still have them in the Hamilton Hole? Is it still the Hamilton Hall where the show bags are?
Yeah. Well, I don't know which one's the Hamilton Hall, but it's in the massive hall. Yeah.
That place is crazy. Just carnage.
The cool thing about being at the little Traralgon show and these little country shows is that after a few days, the novelty kind of the show, the crowds go down a little bit, or it's a school day or something like that. But you'd be wandering around just with your BMX and walking, and then you'd see guys that would be... the guy who's on the balloon popping thing where you throw a dart at a balloon and you might win a prize. And he's just sick of working there. So you'd actually could get a job. And so every now and then I'd get a job and you'd be like, basically you can keep whatever you earn. So you'd sort of, I'd take it over and I'd say to people, come and have a show, come and have a go on this and so forth. And you'd earn a few dollars. Yeah. But then you just... quit, you'd go, I've got $2 in my hand. Right, sorry mate, I'm off now to go spend the $2.
Buy a show bag.
Yeah.
So the guy who's doing the maintenance on the roller coaster says, "Hey, you kid, do you want to come and do the roller coaster maintenance for the next 4 days?" Yeah, okay. That's
right. Yeah, it's like that's right. Here, come and judge the Mallee Bull competition. And of course, you had drawings in there as well. You put your drawings in and your paintings from school, and you might win a prize.
Oh no, that didn't happen at the Royal Adelaide show. That's very provincial.
Oh yeah. And you draw stuff and it just definitely goes in. Like everyone in your art class gets to get their stuff in there, and you might win a prize.
Did you ever win anything?
I do remember once getting a how there's you can come first or second or third, or there's this kind of encouragement certificate one. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I don't know about those, but I'm sure you do.
I've got a whole drawer of those. They're all the way through high school. Anyway, so it's 2 peaks in my life was becoming sports captain at our school and getting this encouragement certificate thing. I can't remember what it's called, but it's sort of...
Was it for a picture you drew?
4th, basically. Yeah. I can't remember what picture.
I know what you mean.
And I tell you what, I don't want that back. No. I wouldn't kill to still have that, but...
You want Dermot's autograph?
Yeah, I would, yeah. And it's a worthless thing, but it's just such a token of being, that age and stuff.
Yeah.
What about you, man?
All those things from my childhood that I wish I still had that are replaceable, I tend to have gone through a phase of replacing.
Yeah.
Like my collection of Return of the Jedi collector cards that I lost, but meant so much to me. I just a while ago just went out and bought a whole, set of vintage Return of the Jedi cards and then put them in a sealed crate and I have them in storage.
Yeah.
And, and you remember well, we went through a phase of rebuying vintage Star Wars figures at second-hand shops and things like that. So you a lot of the stuff that's replaceable I've replaced. Stuff that's irreplaceable, I have memories of stuff like that and autographs and personal trinkets that if I found them again or had them again would bring me a lot of warmth. But
is there anything that stands out? And maybe it doesn't go back to childhood. Maybe it's 2 years ago I had this particular thing and I'd love to still have it, but
Do you know what? If I could have anything back, the thing that's popping into my head now is, I don't know if I've ever told this story, but in year 3 at school, I had a teacher called Mrs. Delbridge, and one of the things we had to do was keep like a daily journal in an exercise book, and you would write, last night I went to the park and played cricket, or you could write whatever you wanted each day. And Mrs. Delbridge said at the end of the year, whoever I judged to have done the best journal will be given a prize. And she pulled this thing out, and it was a small diary, and it was a 5-year diary, like a 5-year planner, where January 1 had 5 different years on it, and then January 2 had 5 different years on it. So you would go through the diary for 1987 across the top row, and then the second row you would do 1988. And, how it worked is irrelevant. It also had a little lock on it.
Yeah.
And I just, I coveted this diary. I wanted it so much that I set my stall out to win it. And I wasn't the kind of kid that would normally win that kind of thing. I wasn't particularly, square or studious in year 3 at school. And there was this other girl who was really good, who was really smart and clever, and she really wanted to win it as well. And we ended up going head to head. But the thing I did with my diary that was different to all the other kids was and I didn't do this to try and, be different or stand out. It's just what I wanted to do with my diary, was instead of doing like a daily entry about boring stuff like I love my mummy and daddy and stuff, I decided to write like a novel. This to me it was an epic novel, but it was probably only, 20 pages long.
Yeah.
About a spy. And I still remember what he was called. He was called IJM. He was a spy. It was just initials were IJM. And he had a girlfriend called Cindy, and he was just like having adventures and like trying to catch baddies and shoot lasers and stuff. He was like kind of a James Bond type character.
What did IGM stand for?
I didn't know. I just called him that, and I hadn't really figured out what it stood for. I think I made something up towards the end that was a bit crap. I think I couldn't think of a male name that started with I, so I called him Ingrid, because I'd heard the name Ingrid Bergman, and I thought that was a man. I now know Ingrid Bergman is a woman, so I think I called him Ingrid. So anyway, there's a little bit of trivia I never thought I'd have to share on a podcast, but... So anyway, I wrote this spy story about IJM, Ingrid, and it was so long it actually spilled into a second journal. And I still remember on the last day of school in year 3, and the other girl, Kirsty, had done like a magnificent journal. And I remember the last day of school, Mrs. Delbridge sitting at the front of the class and pulling out the 5-year diary and saying, all right, now I'm going to announce who won it. And like she opened up the cover where there was a front page with a name where for the person to write their name, and she had already written the name, and it said Brady Harron.
Wow.
And I got the 5-year diary.
Wow.
And I loved it so much, and it was so special to me that I was unwilling to write in it and sully it. So I never ever used it or wrote in it, and I just kept it in a special corner of a drawer in my desk for when I felt I was like worthy to write in it, and I never did. And I've lost it now. I can't even totally remember what it looked like. And if I could have that now, I would dearly love it. I would almost most love it just to see Mrs. Delbridge's having written my name in the front. But the other thing I would really love would be that IGM spy story.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's gold.
Yeah.
Ingrid, your hero.
I can't hear or see Ingrid Bergman now and not think it's a man.
Yeah. That's cool. Was it a complete story, or was it? It was obviously if you won, it wasn't just.
Yeah. It was. It had an end. I think I remember now. IJM died at the end, and his friend paid tribute to him. And that's when his name is revealed. His name's not revealed till after he dies, and like towards the end, and his mate says, "I'll never forget the amazing spy work done by Ingrid." Whatever the other two names were. I can't remember what the J and the M stood for.
R.I.P. IJM.
It ended only I remember it ended only a couple of pages into book 2 as well. Like it just spilled out of book 1 into book 2 and ended. Like disappointingly so. Like that it was just a page or two of book 2. But yep.
There you go. Like a lost masterpiece.
It is a lost masterpiece. Yeah. All right.
So that's what you'd have. That makes sense.
That's just what I thought of, yeah.
So I think that'd be cool. I mean, because I think there's a story about these sorts of things. And
well, I just showed
it's a shame you don't remember how they're lost.
We both did it, didn't we? We both had like a boring, self-indulgent, very personal story to tell about it.
But people got to skip through mine. It's not fair. We had to sit through yours.
You didn't know how bad mine was going to be until it had finished. the other thing I remember, and I thought I was so clever to come up with this, and it shows how the young mind works, because I wanted there to be lasers and things being shot. And I remember there's this scene where IJM is about to get shot with a laser gun by a baddie, and just as he's about to get shot, I was so influenced by James Bond. I wanted him to have a really clever way to get out of being shot, like, you know, a James Bond type, because you know how James Bond always gets out of scrapes and such. You know, he's so innovative. So the innovative idea I came up with was, just as he's about to get shot, he jumps like to the left, and the laser misses him, but he was standing in front of a hot donut machine, and the laser or the bullet shoots the donut machine, and the boiling, I don't know, I think I thought it was boiling water. I probably wrote it was boiling water, but obviously I now realise it's oil or cooking oil or something. The boiling oil came out of the donut machine and sprayed back onto the guy that had shot the laser and like burnt his face.
No.
And I can see how I guess I was, 8 years old? I can see how the 8-year-old Brady was thinking. He'd been watching James Bond movies, so he wanted, like, James Bond his IJM to get out of something cleverly. But obviously I'd also seen a donut machine and had been told how hot and dangerous that liquid was. You know, Mum had probably said, don't go too close to the donut machine, that stuff's really dangerous. So, like...
Don't go firing a laser gun into this.
So, like, when young Brady, 8-year-old Brady's thinking, what's a dangerous thing to hurt the baddie? His brain straight away went to a donut machine, because that's what his mum had told him was dangerous.
That's very good.
Oh, man, how embarrassed would I be reading that now? So embarrassed. I get really embarrassed by it.
You wouldn't be embarrassed. You'd just be charmed. It's charmed.
No, I get a bit
magnificent.
I get a bit embarrassed and cringy when I see younger me stuff.
But don't you hold it up and sort of, it's a different person.
Yeah,
You're a child. You can't, you hold it up to today's standards and go, there's a lot of other things you should be embarrassed about you're doing now rather than stuff back then.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm embarrassed about those too.
Have you listened to any other episodes of the Unmade podcast?
I'm probably more embarrassed by the story I just told about IJM.
That's right.
I can't believe I've brought IJM back. Like, I guess in some ways I'm cheating, because you said I couldn't bring people back from death, and IJM did technically die. So
yeah, she was a real person.
No, hey. Don't be bad. Ingrid was a man. Yeah, I'm bringing Ingrid into fashion as a man's name now, based on a childhood misconception.
That's right. It does sound like an exotic name. It's got that sort of European exotic feel to it.
You can just picture me overhearing my mum and dad talking about Ingrid Bergman, the famous, and thinking, if they're famous, they must be a man, because I'm a kid and stupid, and not thinking it could have been an actress.
There we go. I'd love to still have, and I'd love to hear from other people on the Reddit as well if they want to put on things. Because I think a lot of people love sharing this kind of stuff, and something would immediately come to mind. So
yes,
share it with us on the Reddit.
We will go onto the subreddit and read your equally long and tedious childhood stories about things that mean a lot to you.
I'd like to still have the opportunity to do that idea again.
I like it. I think that was a good one. I enjoyed that. Hey, we should thank our sponsor, Tim. We should thank our sponsor. I haven't got like a proper sponsor message here to read.
Right.
We've been sponsored again by Hover.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes. So, Hover, best website, best service for going and registering domain names. They've got really easy to search, and then you can get your .coms or your .fms and .nets and all sorts of other stuff you can't believe even exists, like .ninja. I don't think they have .ijm, but, I don't think .ijm is a thing yet, but if it is, Hover will have it, that's for sure.
What's .ninja for?
I don't know.
Why would they have .ninja?
I don't know who uses that. Maybe it's if you're like really good at something, like you're the TV .ninja or something. You're good at fixing TV sets or something. Or
yeah.
Let me have a look at what some of them are. What else is on this list? I always find it quite interesting.
How do you spell hover?
Well, it's hover.com.
Very good.
I do use Hover, people, almost every day. Unlike Tim, obviously, who still has not got onto the domain name bandwagon because he lives in Adelaide. You can get .guru.
Once we get the internet, I'll start looking into this. My mum's probably all across it.
.soy. I've actually used your name as my test thing, so I'm actually looking at things like timhine.church and timhine.click.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I register all sorts of names. If you've got any project or anything you're looking to do, people, you should use Hover. You can use them straight away for a website you've already got, or you can just sit on them for later, which is a smart thing to do. So if you want that timhine.yoga, now's your chance, because that's still available.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just put in Tim Hine and a whole bunch of stuff's come up. This is great.
Really good service.
Good.
Anyway, you'll get 10% off your first Hover purchase when you get your first domains by going to hover.com/unmade. hover.com/unmade. Seriously, they are a really, really good service. I have loads and loads of domains registered with them sitting there in my basket. Some of them are already in use, attached to websites. Some of them are just sitting there for a rainy day.
No, this is good. This is actually really good.
Oh, they've sponsored loads of episodes, and this is the first time.
I know they have. I know. I'll take your word for it, but this is. I'm going through the process now. This is really awesome, easy. It's got offers.
It is good. Really good interface.
The price is right there.
Really good interface. And the other thing is that you probably don't realise this, Tim, but normally websites where you register domain names are actually kind of rubbish and complicated and hard to use, and this one is very, very easy to use.
I can get timhine.rodeo.
Yeah.
If I wanted to set up my own rodeo.
There's one here that's timhine.sucks. Normally these are really cheap, but that one is actually quite expensive. Otherwise, I would be registering that one.
It's like an insult from the late 90s. Like, www.timhine.sucks.
If that was like $30, which most of them are, I would have bought that just to like annoy you. But it's too expensive, that one. I have to find a cheap one. That timhine.ninja is only $19.
Ninja.
Even less with 10% off. Hover.com/unmade.
I'm many things, but I'm not a ninja.
All right, time for an idea from me. It feels like we're only going to do one idea each today, doesn't it? So I feel like I should pick one. I had two I was going to do, but I'm going to do just one.
Okay, well, just do one and we'll see how we go. Look at this. timhine.auto is $2,500.
Some of them are expensive. Like, it depends what they are. Like, some of them are just like...
Yeah.
Other ones, I'm looking at one here, like timhine.site is like $5.
Yep.
So, like, it just
I would
depends.
rather go with Hindsight. You see, that's a great name for a website. Hindsight.
Tell you what, Hover are getting good value out of us today. We're still talking about it. All right. Are you finished with Hover now?
Awesome. Anyway, your idea. Come on.
I've got one here that I like, but I'm scared that you're going to get like freaked out by it. You'll either love it or you'll get all like funny about it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for this one. Let me tell you what inspired this one, because that might be a more gentle way to ease you into the idea.
Okay.
Someone posted a really beautiful picture on Instagram the other day of like a scenic outlook, and their comment underneath, which was like, mildly amusing, was, "I think this is the most beautiful place I've ever stopped for a pee." Because they'd obviously, they were on a hike and they went to the toilet in nature, like you do. And it was beautiful scenery. And it did make me think, I've been on some amazing hikes and treks and things, and I've had to go to the toilet in all sorts of interesting places over the years. So it made me think about a podcast about people talking about interesting places they've had to go to the toilet. It's a very human thing. Places I have peed. And one of the things I really liked about it was you could also give, because there's this real thing now of naming podcasts after tapes, like, like forgotten tapes and found tapes and that, the Watergate tapes and the RFK tapes and stuff like that. So I would call this the P tapes.
The P tapes.
Because then I can, get a bit on the zeitgeist of all the American politics stuff as well. So the P tapes. But this is all about just interesting places and experiences you've had with toilets. And sometimes, for example, it could also just be like magnificent toilets you've been to. Like, there are some really interesting toilets around the world, and some really creative and artistic things that have been done with toilets. I can think of a few that I've been to. So the P tapes is all about that most human of moments when we have to do a little wee-wee, but any interesting stories that are associated with it.
I went to this really strange toilet once, which was not in a very significant place at all, but I was at a wedding reception, and it was in sort of like a cool factory-like fashion shop. It was, like with high ceilings and stuff like that in Melbourne. And I went off to find the toilet and had to go upstairs at a longer corridor and all that. And then I opened the door to the toilet, and it was a long, big room. And so you sort of open the door and close it, and right down the other end of the room was like an elevated little platform, and then the toilet was sitting there, like a throne in a throne room.
Yeah.
And the room was so big you could have fit like 30 or 40 people in there.
Yeah.
So it was so strange to close the door, walk across the room, up onto this platform, and then go to the toilet, like looking down on a room like you're sitting on a throne. And I was so self-conscious. It was so strange.
That you'd feel really exposed, I imagine. Like, I don't like going to a toilet where I can't reach out and touch the door in case of an emergency.
That's right. Yeah. It was like, you know, someone else could come in, but it's almost like they're supposed to, like, because you're sitting on a throne. It's like, you know, bring in the prisoner, or you know. And there'd be someone leaning in from your right hand saying, you know, your worship, are you prepared to do... You know, it was so strange. It was set up for guests. Yeah, that was funny.
That's a great example of a really common experience you have, and I'm sure you've done this lots of times, I certainly have, when you're at an interesting venue that's done something creative with their bathroom, and you come back to like the dinner table or the event you're at, and you say to the other people or your wife or your partner, oh my goodness, you have to go to the toilet. It is the best toilet I've ever seen. Like, that's quite a common thing these days, isn't it? Oh my goodness, make sure, even if you don't need to go, make sure you just go and have a look at the bathroom before you leave. It's amazing.
Yeah. The last time I did that, it was where there was some sort of water feature where washing your hands involved the water, not just coming out of a tap or faucet or whatever you call it wherever you are, but it actually sort of went along a little path and down a bit and around, and you know what I mean? Like through this little journey before it got to you.
I love that stuff. Yeah, like a little Rube Goldberg type machine for the water.
I think this is a good idea, by the way. I think it's a really interesting idea.
The one that keeps coming into my mind is when I went to the Himalayas, when I went to Everest Base Camp, and you're doing all these like treks on the way there over the days. There was one toilet I went to which was like, you know, like a long drop type outhouse at some little cafe where you stop for a coffee, and they've got some pretty rudimentary bathroom out the back. And like sitting on one of those sort of long droppy type hole toilets in the ground is a gritty enough experience at the best of times. But the thing that made this toilet extra interesting is that a really common thing in Nepal, where there's not a lot of wood and trees because you're up so high, but they need stuff to burn in their cookers and burners and ovens and heaters, is they keep yak poo and they flatten it down into like a pancake shape, and then they just dry it out over, like, you know, days or weeks or months, and then when it's really dry you get these like dry hard yak poo pancakes, and you just break them in half or break them into quarters and stuff them into your burner, and that's what they use to burn. That's just, you know, just what they do.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. But so you need somewhere to dry out all these yak poo pancakes, and you'll quite often will just see a wall of them, like as high as a bookshelf, like all neatly stacked like a stone wall, except they're these yak poo pancakes. They're just these brown, dark brown pancakes. And this toilet I went to happened to be where they were also drying out their yak poo, and they used that like as the walls of the toilet. So you were sitting on the toilet, and to your left and to your right and behind you, at least 6 or 7 foot high, were just walls of yak poo pancakes, so close to you that, you know, you'd brush them with your elbows. So it was this weird experience of going to a long drop toilet, which is, you know, not the best experience in the world, and you were doing it literally surrounded on 3 sides by walls of poo.
Oh, wow.
Lovely.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I liked it.
That was in the Himalayas, was it?
Yes, it was. Not far from Mount Everest.
Where's the most exclusive place that you've ever gone to the bathroom?
Ooh, that's a good question. I've got a friend who interviewed Bill Gates and went and used Bill Gates' personal toilet in his office.
Oh, right, okay. At his workplace?
That's not me, yeah. The most exclusive.
I did a tour of Buckingham Palace, but I don't remember using... I didn't even think of it to use a bathroom. And I'm pretty sure you would have gone to the outside touristy kind of area.
Yes, I'm sure. Well. I don't think they would have led you to the Queen's personal throne room.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Here's the throne room. Oh, I did the other throne room. So you've just been at a couple of hotels, haven't you, in Scandinavia somewhere? And wasn't one of them... Did they have novelty bathrooms in these novelty hotels?
I just went to the Ice Hotel in Sweden, and I went to the Tree Hotel. But the Ice Hotel just had normal toilets. And the Tree Hotel... Oh, yeah, that's right. The Tree Hotel did have toilets in the room. So these were these rooms up in trees that were all specially themed. Like one of them's a big... mirror cube, and one of them's a huge bird's nest and things like that. I'll post some pictures, and I posted a bunch of pictures on my own Instagram. It was a really amazing place to stay. But there was no plumbing because these things are tree houses. So they had these toilets called Cinderellas, which you would go to, and they were like they were kind of like a normal toilet, but you would have to put like a little paper bag in the catchment area before you went, and then you would do what you had to do, and then you pressed a button, and like a trapdoor opened, and that paper bag disappeared, and it incinerated what you'd just done with 600 degree fire, and just created ash. And presumably every day or two they just empty out all the ash.
Wow.
It was funny. It was like every time you went to the toilet there was like a little cremation ceremony for what you just did.
Wow. That's crazy. That's funny. That's amazing.
Cinderella, I thought, was a clever name for it.
Why is it called Cinderella?
Because of the cinders and, Cinderella. The name Cinderella is based on the person who has to clean out all the cinders and the ash and stuff, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yes. Yeah. It's really funny. Just before you came here, I was put on for a moment an Australian film called Kenny. Have you seen Kenny?
I have, yes, I have.
Yeah, which is, if you can look it up wherever you are, it did have an international release, I think. But it's a very funny Australian quirky film about, it's almost like a little mockumentary kind of thing about a character whose job it is to take those temporary toilets to big festivals and events and so forth. And he drops them off, and people use them, those, temporary toilets, and plumbs them up and then takes them away again at the end of the day or at the end of the week or whatever. Yeah. And he's a really quintessentially adorable kind of Australian character.
It's a very charming film. It wasn't quite what I expected. I expected like lots of jokes involving poo and stuff like that, but it was actually a really charming, feel-good love story that was just like, it was just a little ray of sunshine, that film. It was just a little piece of goodness.
No, I loved it, yeah. But he's, kind of in the industry, and I can imagine he might enjoy this podcast.
Yeah, he meets his love interest on a plane, doesn't he? Because she's a flight attendant and there's a problem with the toilet, and he fixes it because he's a toilet expert.
That's right, on the way over to Texas or somewhere, isn't he? He's going to yeah. I didn't get very far with it, and I'll go back and watch the rest of it. I haven't seen it for years and years, but yeah, Kenny with a K. Yeah, that's a great film. It's a good film. It's a good, funny, charming film. Yeah. All about the same topic as your podcast.
Let's do an idea from a Patreon supporter to finish off.
Oh, good stuff. I was talking to someone the other day who's holding back on becoming a Patreon supporter because they didn't want to join... they didn't want to become a supporter until they had an idea, in case they got an email from you requesting an idea and they didn't have one. So they've been saving up becoming a Patreon supporter until I said to her, her name is Katrina, and I said, Katrina, that's no reason to hold back. No. But we would love to hear an idea from her.
And if you do become a Patreon supporter, I do occasionally get in touch and call for people to send in ideas, but you don't have to give an idea straight away. Coming up with an idea is just like a perk of being a Patreon supporter. What you're really doing is supporting us to be able to make more episodes. And we appreciate everyone who supports us on Patreon, and we appreciate everyone who listens and doesn't support us on Patreon. But if you want to, go to patreon.com/unmadefm. I can never remember if there's an underscore in it. There's not. It's just unmadefm. Patreon.com/unmadefm. Much appreciated. So anyway, one person who did take the plunge and helps us out is Swan.
Swan?
Brackets, pronounced like the bird.
Oh, right. But is spelt like the bird?
With two N's, not one.
Oh.
Swan is from France, from Toulouse, and he's also put in brackets Toulouse, in case I didn't know how to pronounce Toulouse. I do know how to pronounce Toulouse, because I actually had a dog named Toulouse once, believe it or not. Swan is a physiotherapist. I've worked 2 years in a hospital in the Department of Neurology, and now work as a self-independent physio going to different places. Swan describes himself as an outdoorsman, so he's probably peed in all sorts of interesting places, as he does many mountain trips and likes climbing. There's a whole bunch of stuff about his fitness and running, but he does like listening to our ideas while he's running. He says, I sometimes crack in laughter, and it's quite weird from an outsider's point of view.
As he's running along. That's fantastic.
So his podcast idea, which is quite a good one, is called SuperDuper Normal. And the point is to rephrase something normal, but to make it sound as awesome as it actually is. For example, binocular vision he says, could be called depth perception gaze. Talking could be called air-transmitted telepathy. A rainbow could be called unexpected watery diffraction. It could cover a large panel of domain, but science stuff is surely the most prone to this. You could then go on to explain the phenomenon and try to imagine variations of it. I don't know if this would be a long podcast, maybe just 10-15 minute explanation discussions. It's a bit of a nerdy type of podcast, but it could be liked by some people. Have an excellent day, says Swan.
So this is the idea, they've got to be technical, is that right? So it's not just cool names for things.
I think it's taking something that has like a normal name that you take for granted and giving it a name that kind of conveys how awesome it is. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like a pencil could be called a...
slow lead dispenser or something.
Yeah. Graphite communication device or... yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the idea around these as well is to avoid being pretentious about it, but actually to demonstrate pencils are pretty incredible inventions, actually. You know what I mean? You take them for granted, but...
Yeah. Or the opposite could be... Or you could try to be maximum pretentious, could be the other way you take it, and try to, add as much grandioseness as possible to something that isn't that grandiose.
You were tweeting something about this week, about something. I remember you said...
What?
Oh, something was given an overly complicated name. I can't remember what it is now. I was saying to someone today what you told me years ago, the idea of the name of sky juice for water. Sky juice.
That rings a bell. Did I say that today?
Yeah, I think you told me that like a decade ago or something.
For rain.
For rain, yeah.
Anyway, I've kind of thrown that at us, so I haven't really thought much about it. When I was just reading it a second ago, I was trying to think of something that had been in the news a lot that I could apply this to. And the first thing that came into my mind was this recent story about this new picture of a black hole. And I was trying to think of a name for a black hole, like, gravitational catastrophe point or something. And then I thought, hang on. Black hole actually is a pretty awesome name already. If there's anything in the universe that doesn't need a cooler name, it's a black hole.
I've got stationery in front of me, and there's a pair of scissors, and I'm trying to think about like opposable blades.
A binary blade paper incisor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool. Good idea, Swan.
Yeah, I think this is an idea that you could sit around and have a lot of fun with. In fact, you could just do it for fun yourself. It's not necessarily the kind of thing I think would work in a podcast, unless it was a very brief idea for the day kind of one, or you have a bunch prepared. But,
we've had a bit of preparation. You'd also probably have a little bit about the history of scissors and different kinds of scissors and things like that. So, I can...
And where they got their current name from, that's the thing.
Yes, indeed. Tim.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, as always.
It was a pleasure.
Keep in touch with what's going on at the sofa shop.
People have probably got through this episode in record time because of all the jumping forward they did earlier on.
Skipping off Tim's bits. Go back and listen again. And
I wonder if there's anyone that listens to the podcast with that and they have like they like the ideas of one person but not the other. Like, so for instance, they only listen for Brady's ideas, so they just Tim's on skip. You know what I mean? And then jump, bang.
Yeah. Well, that's what I do.
Do you have a version of Brady's greatest hits where you've gone through and just got your parts with all of them?
I've actually set up 2 feeds of the Unmade Podcast, right? And there's one where it's just all my ideas and you're completely cut out.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones that you are in and you're the only person who I send that to. And like I've sent you the link to it and you think that's what we're making every week and you listen to it and think, oh, that's brilliant. But all the people who are listening and support us on Patreon and all that, they have a different RSS feed and they're actually just listening to me. They don't even know who you are. Like, it's just... I'm
living in my own podcast Truman Show.
Yeah. So you were in the sofa shop the other day talking to them saying, oh yeah, I do the Unmade Podcast. And they're like, are you Brady? And you're like, no, I'm Tim. And they're like, what? The Unmade Podcast is just Brady.
He must be the silent producer or someone. Like he's just one of Brady's minions.
Yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, Tim, because you're the only person listening to it. We should just at the end of every podcast have a message saying, by the way, loads of stuff you just heard was wrong. Please disregard everything.
I think our reputation may precede us in that regard and we may not need...
It's just implicit.
So the judge goes, but it's Tim and Brady, of course we don't take it seriously. Case dismissed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite movie review podcast. That's right, Is It Kino? And we're here with a very special penultimate episode for one E-Bitch McSoy, reviewing with a very special guest. Folks, welcome to the foursome trio. I gotta rework this intro in my head. Welcome to the foursome trio, the four deadly horsemen from your wildest dreams. We're talking Monkey Jones, E. Rich McCoy.
Yes. You're not locked in here with me. Wait, I fucked it up.
We're all fucking everything up today. Florian Herschel.
Yeah, I'm here.
And special Kino guest. He hasn't been on this show since Asperger was still around.
Oh, no.
One.
Oh, God.
Asterios Kokonos.
Thank you for having me. We're here to discuss one of my favorite comics and one of, I think, the most interesting movies you're ever going to talk about on this show.
Wow. You're a good guest to have, because I had almost no interest in talking about this. We're, of course, talking about the ultimate cut. The Snyder cut, folks. They finally released it. The Snyder cut of one Watchmen, rated R. Now, why are we doing this, E-Rich? Why, for your penultimate episode, until I guess John Wick comes out, did you want to talk about Watchmen?
All right, so back in the day when the Watchmen movie was released, I had just gotten into, really into superhero comics. And so I was watching The Dark Knight, and I saw this trailer, this amazing, mind-blowing trailer for a visionary Zack Snyder movie called Watchmen. And I was like, what the fuck is this? There's some crazy fucking blue guy. He's getting reassembled and shit.
His dick's hanging out everywhere.
His dick is out. His dick is out in the fucking movie. And I had to know what the fuck was going on here. So I read the book. And I was at some party, and I was reading the last chapter of this book.
Liar. Wheel that one back.
No,
you were alone at home.
No.
You can be at a one-person party at a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I am every Saturday night.
No, it was one of those parties that your parents drag you to for them, essentially. So I was in the corner reading the last chapter of my comic.
You were at the kids' table, and you're 20 years older than all the kids.
My mind was fucking blown when this vagina alien monster is transported into the middle of New York and everyone fucking dies.